Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me thank you for being here. The stories on this podcast are meant to let you know that you're not alone in what you're going through and that we can all find strength in struggle with the right perspective. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let me ask that you leave a review on your platform of choice to help us grow so that we can continue to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 202. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in the state of Utah, we have a very, very special guest, Adam Burns. Adam, how's it going?
It's going good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, it's a pleasure. And I figured I would just share with the audience about how we got connected. And it's through a client and friend of mine, Simon Prushan. Simon is a character, and I should have Simon on the podcast at some point now that I'm saying this. But Simon told me about you a while back because of something crazy that you were doing and you ended up finishing, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But before I keep going, I would love for you, Adam, to just introduce yourself to people listening however you want.
Yeah, so my name's Adam Burns. I'm 23 years old. I'm an ultra runner. Grew up in Utah. Lived here pretty much my whole life. And I'm the fastest person to ever run across Utah. So,
Now, the second fastest person to ever run across Utah, have you interacted or communicated with them?
yeah, so the second fastest person, his name is Mason Wright. He goes by like Buff Runner on Instagram, but he was like he was so important for the record. He gave me his route. He was super helpful. We were probably calling him two or three times a day throughout the run, just making sure we were on the right route and everything. So I don't think I would have got the record without him. And it was really helpful to have him. And then it was also really cool that he wanted to help me break the record, even though he had just said it 8 months earlier. So.
That is cool. And we will definitely talk more about that. I guess for the time being, let me step back and ask you a question just about where you're from. So, Utah is a state that I've been to only once in the Zion region. It's beautiful. What's one misconception that a lot of people not from Utah have about Utah?
It's a good question. I feel like a lot of the misconceptions about Utah are actually pretty true. Um, I don't know. I guess this year, like I think a lot of people think of Utah as like super snowy and powdery, and this year we've had no snow. It's the first year we've like my whole life we've always had snow all winter, and we've had nothing this year. Like nothing stuck for more than 24 hours, so it's kind of sad. But yeah, no snow here this year. Worst snow on Earth.
Wow. So, in Philadelphia on the East Coast, we got quite a bit of snow a few weeks ago, and it almost feels like different parts of the country are just swapping weather patterns. It's kind of odd. But, with that being said, before we dive into the real deep stuff, I'll ask you more of a surface level question that I'm sure will integrate into a lot of our conversation. But what got you into running in the first place?
I guess it's kind of complicated. I got into fitness in the first place just because I was like pretty overweight. I was getting bullied a lot. And then I wanted to just like change what I saw in the mirror essentially. So I got into like fitness through David Goggins. And then through that, I'm like, all right, I want to push myself more. And so I got to do something that I hate. So I did a half marathon when I was in high school. And I thought that was like the hardest thing in the world. And then after that, there's this guy named Iron Cowboy. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Mhm.
But so he lives just 15 minutes away from me, and he was in the middle of his Conquer 100 series where he was running or doing a full distance Ironman every day for 101 days. And I'm like, if this guy can do 101, like I could probably do one. And so I did an Ironman in high school with no training. It was terrible. Swam in an indoor pool, biked on a stationary bike, and then went and ran with him for the marathon. And then after that, I kind of hung it up for a while. I was like, all right, I got my fix. Like, ran an Ironman. Like, I think I'm done with running. I'm just gonna go to the gym. And then a couple years passed, and like I was kind of starting to find myself in a bit of a low again, and just not really happy with what I was doing with my life, and like I kind of felt like I was just going through the motions and like checking the box every day.
Mm.
And so I wanted to start like a run streak, just do something that I hated doing every day, just to try to build some like discipline and self-confidence back that like I am who I say I am. So I started the streak. The goal was to make it 100 days and run at least 1 mile every day. So nothing crazy. And then I'm like, that's approachable. So even if I'm having a bad day, like it'll be 12 minutes. Like I can go run for 12 minutes. And so started the run streak. The first 30 days were miserable. I hated it every single time. And then something happened after like a month or a month and a half where I started kind of enjoying my runs. And I'm like, I'm gonna see if I can go a little farther today. Like this is fun. Like having a good time. And then I'd say around like day 50 or day 60, like I started noticing a huge difference. Like when I would go on longer runs and like really get out there and like think through my thoughts and process my emotions, like I would just have such better days. I felt my depression was way more manageable. My anxiety was lower. I slept better. Like everything was kind of pretty much all aspects of life were better. So I'm like, I'm just gonna keep doing this. Like I'm starting to like this a lot. And then that's kind of how like the running started. Through that, once I started falling in love with it, I started following content creators that did running. And I'm like, oh, like you can do all these like cool things. And I ended up finding Matt Johnson, and he had posted something about this retreat in St. George. And I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty close. Maybe I could go to that. Like it'd be cool to meet this guy that's running across Texas and go meditate and do breath work for a couple days, like work on myself. So went to that, and then while I was there, it was called like the Made for More retreat. But basically, while I was there, through like the work that we did, I realized that I was just not living a life that I really wanted to live in like a way where I don't know. I wasn't chasing like the things that actually gave me purpose and like made me happy and what I felt like I should be doing. I was just kind of doing what I felt like the world thought I should be doing. So I decided at the retreat that I was gonna try to run across Utah and set the record and raise money for suicide prevention, which is something that I struggled with a lot. So it felt like a good cause.
Man, there's so much good stuff to dive into there. And I guess just to start, it's interesting hearing you talk. And the world feels like a big place until you meet people and have conversations and you realize it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so, episode 11 of this podcast, Danny Jimenez, he actually ran a lot of the marathon, or I guess he just participated in a lot of the Iron Cowboys 101 day stuff.
Yeah.
And he's not far from you. Do you know Danny?
I know. Yeah, I know Danny. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Danny's awesome. And then episode 195 of this podcast, Bear Lee, who is also in Utah. Do you know Bear?
Yeah, Bart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he goes by Bear, which we
Yeah.
talked about in the podcast. So
He's
him,
such a good guy.
he's a great dude. And then Matt Johnson was episode 96 of this podcast. And Matt's an incredible human. And, you know, when you go and put yourself out there and you do these things, the world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And, you know, one of the cool parts of this podcast for me is talking to people who go do hard things on purpose. And I think there's something so attractive and inspirational about that. And there are a lot of people listening right now who they want to do hard things and life has given them something really hard that they're navigating and maybe they don't feel like they have the bandwidth right now to go, you know, run across Utah or even start a run streak. And I know we all go through our own stuff. And so I ask this first question to every guest on the podcast, but when you look back at your 23 years so far, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you didn't choose for yourself?
I would say, I guess just like in a broader sense, just like dealing with depression and anxiety and like suicidal ideation throughout mm, some of elementary school, middle school, and most of high school. Um, And then I guess all that kind of stems together. It was like I was getting bullied a lot. I hated myself, and then I would drown out my feelings with food, and then I would also celebrate any accomplishments with food. And then it just kind of was like getting down a path where I was like for a good while I was pretty ready to just not be here anymore. Um, Luckily I have like family and parents that really love me, and like the thing that kept me here was like I'm like they don't deserve that. But for I'd say for like 2 years I kind of was just like I don't care about anything. Like I'm ready to be done. I'm just kind of waiting a little bit. And then yeah, I mean through fitness and through like building self-discipline, I think that's kind of what got me out of it. But for a long time, it felt pretty hopeless, and that was just going to be my life forever. So like, what was the point of trying? So I think that's definitely the hardest thing I've went through, just like dealing with depression, and like I still deal with it in some ways. It's definitely not as bad as it used to be, but I, that's definitely I'd say the hardest thing that I've had to do with.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing, and we'll dive into that a little bit. And for anyone listening, right, this is going to be the topic for the next handful of minutes. And so if it's something that you don't want to listen to, that's fine. Fast forward a bit. But we will put a positive spin on all of this. And I guess to go back to where it all started, you mentioned elementary school. And to me, that's one, it's a long time ago, but two, I don't have many solid memories from elementary school. I almost felt like I was like not a real person. I was just a kid, kind of carefree, running around, playing kickball, Pokemon, stuff like that. What was it about being a kid that made you feel that way? Or do you remember when you started feeling that way?
Um, I don't remember specifically when. I just kind of remember always feeling that way, I guess. Like,
Hmm.
I think the depression kind of runs in the family. Like, my dad has bipolar. He's medicated for it and everything, but obviously, like, the stuff happens. And, like, so I think it sort of runs in the family. And I remember going to therapy in like fourth or fifth grade and like being on antidepressants and anti-anxiety stuff just from like an extremely young age. And I don't know, like I don't have really like when I look back at my childhood, I think I remember a lot of like sports moments, but
Hmm.
I don't really feel like I was very like carefree ever. Like I think I always kind of cared a lot about what other people thought about me and like making my family proud and my parents proud. And like I think I was just overly competitive and put just way too much pressure on myself my whole life. So like I was the kid that would crash out if we lost a sports game in third grade, like in T-ball. Like I just like I cared so much about winning and like doing good. And so I think that I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I got a lot of pressure on myself from a young age, and it was all self-inflicted. Like my parents didn't care if I was good at sports; they just wanted me to have fun. But I couldn't do it. Like I had to win,
Yeah.
and then
Well, I go back in my mind. I've never shared this on the podcast, but I played I played a number of sports growing up until I really focused on one or two. But one of the early sports was basketball, and I was never great at basketball. I was good at defense. And if you ever hear someone say they're good on defense in basketball, it just means like they give a lot of effort, right? I didn't have a
yeah,
lot of skill. But I was the kid where, I was 8 years old and someone would steal the ball from me and I would immediately turn around and run and, at times tackle, more or less that person because there was something inside of me that just didn't love the thought of losing, didn't love the thought of someone taking something from me. And there was this drive and fire inside me that I needed to learn how to control. And over time, I've seen that become a really good thing. So,
yeah.
my question for you is those same traits and qualities that you described a bit of from a young age, have they shifted at all to become a net positive in your life these days?
I would say like partially, if I'm being honest, right? Like I think that like the drive that I had when I was younger and like really wanting to win made it so that like I was a really hard worker. You know, like I mean I was in third grade I would get home from school and go set up a tee by the fence in the backyard and go hit balls into the fence for 4 hours because I thought I was going to be the next Barry Bonds. Like and I would miss the fence once, and I would just get pissed off, even though it's like nobody's there, nobody's watching. And I think that part is like good, and I think that's kind of stuck with me and like helped me with the training for running across Utah, and like gives me a lot of the work ethic I have now. But I think the hard part is taking that without taking the being super hard on yourself part, and it's hard to have one without the other, is what I've realized. So I think it I still have that in a way, and it makes me like want to do big things, and like I like doing that. But then at the same time, if I fail something, I'm not very good at giving myself grace and being like, oh well, you controlled what you could control. Like it's kind of all or nothing for me. So
Yeah, it's relatable on one hand, and on the other hand, it ties into actually the previous podcast episode 201 with Ronnie Glassman. She talked about growing up. There were these two things in her environment that really helped her grow, and it was high standards, which you're talking about, right? Having high expectations for yourself, wanting to be really great, and then also on the other side, high warmth, meaning like the grace, the softness, the encouragement, both externally and internally. And I think it is really hard when you are an all or nothing kind of person, an extreme kind of person, which I would categorize myself there. It's hard to have the grace, the softness side of it, because the standards are the standards, and if you don't meet the standards, then you fell short. So it's hard, and I think it's something that I've grown in over the past decade, but really the past handful of years. And I know I'll look back one day at 31-year-old Joe talking to 23-year-old Adam, and I'll be like, man, we were just kids.
yeah.
And so hopefully the growth continues. But to go back to, I guess, just a bit of the darkness, the depression, the hard times, you mentioned a 2-year stretch where things felt somewhat hopeless. What was it when you look back at that time that allowed you to, I guess, just endure, right? And to hang in there? I know you mentioned relationships with family and friends, but there must have been something inside of you that thought, hey, like maybe this gets better.
Yeah, I think there's kind of like two things. I think the first thing was having people that believed in me, like having a good support system. My parents are amazing. Like I think they've always kind of put no pressure on me at all, where they're like, dude, go to college if you want. Like we'll pay for it if you get in. Like if you don't want to go to college, don't go to college. Like you can do whatever you want to do. And so that was nice, but at the same time, like for some reason I just put all this pressure on myself, or like they're just saying that, but actually like I need to get into a good school and
Mm,
like do all this other stuff. But I think especially when I was really low, and like this was part of the reason that I called the Run Across Utah the Run for Hope. But I think when I was super, super down, and I would be like having conversations with my mom and just telling her that like I don't like I want to give up, and like it just feels hopeless. She would and it's funny because she doesn't really remember ever saying this, but like it's ingrained in my mind. But she would always just tell me like just don't lose hope, like never lose hope. Like it might be hard right now, you might not see the light at the end of the tunnel, but don't lose hope. And I think that it didn't feel like I had hope at the time, but I knew I'm like, all right, well, my mom's smarter than me, so if she she tells me to never lose hope, like maybe I'll just hold on to 1% of it. And then I think that mixed with the fact that I kind of just hit a breaking point where I'm like, all right, I'm tired of feeling like this. Like I'm either gonna try to get myself to feel different or I'm just gonna give up. But like I owe it to myself and to my family to try before I end it all. Like, and so I think the mixture of having the thought that I knew that the future could be better because I was told it all the time, and like I had people that believed in me, and then hitting kind of the point where I'm like, all right, I've had enough. Like I'm gonna try to take control of my life, and if I can't, like I'm gonna give it, I guess, one last hurrah. That was my mindset.
mm.
So
Well, I'm glad you did. And
me too.
you make me think of a couple different things when you say all that. One is, you ran across the state of Utah, which we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. And I've done a couple 24-hour events up and down a set of stairs, and they're different things, but they share something in common on a much smaller time horizon. My stair experience has helped me see just the natural ups and downs of an endurance event, right? There are
Mhm.
moments where you think, this sucks. There's no way I can keep going. I want to stop. And then you can drink a monster and have some Sour Patch Kids. And 30 minutes later, you're on top of the world. And you're like, this is
Yep.
so cool. I love this, right? And I think life is the same, right? We all go through stretches. Some are longer, some are harder, some are shorter, some are not as deep. But stretches where things are challenging, where things just don't feel great, where you think, man, I don't have a whole lot of hope right now. But just like on the stairs, or as we'll get to your run across Utah, you keep going, you take another step, you try again, and eventually things feel different, things feel better. And this podcast episode that stands out in my mind is episode 193 with Paula Weaver Schrock, who is my wife's aunt who passed away since the recording. But she shared this quote on hope, which is not hers, but she's the one who shared it with me. And it just like, I don't know, it just hit me because I've always thought of hope as this thing where you're wishing, you're dreaming, you're thinking of maybe someday things will get better. But I think hope also has an element of action. And this quote says, people speak of hope as if it is this delicate, ephemeral thing made of whispers and spider webs. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of the cobblestones in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for another go. Right? Like hope is this image of trying again, of getting up, of being beaten up, but not quitting. And I'd imagine you had some moments like that as you ran across Utah. But before I say your answer for you, let me ask you the question. What's the hardest thing you've ever done on purpose?
Yeah, running across Utah for sure.
Yeah. So let's start with the why. I know we touched on it, we alluded to it, but give me the big picture why for running across the state of Utah.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the big picture is I wanted to raise money for suicide prevention because I wanted to do something that felt meaningful. Um, and then I guess to break it down into more steps was, all right, I want to figure out how I can do what I love for a job, and what I love is running and pushing myself. How can I turn this into something that like will help me grow and that I can like actually get people together behind this to make an actual impact instead of just doing it by myself and then, donating $500 at the end. So I'm like, how can I build as many people along with this journey as possible before the end of October so I can get the most amount of donations or essentially make the biggest impact. Most donations sounds like greedy, but I didn't keep anything. So it's like, how can I make the most impact by the end of October? And so from then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go back to school so I have a little bit more like flexibility with my schedule and training. So I was working at the time, quit my job, went back to school, started posting on social media, training for the run, and then trying to get everything put together for it. And so it was kind of like my shot at chasing my dream, but at the same time, like with a meaning behind it that made it so that it felt worthwhile and something that people could get behind.
Man, I love that. And this is where I'd love to tie back in, I guess, the cooperation between you and the previous record holder. And before we go there, I want to share this thought. It's the Latin root of the word compete is competere, which means to strive together. And I think a lot of times when we think of competition, we think of, okay, I am against you, right? Like I need to beat someone else. But the root is to strive together. It's almost more of a collaboration than it is the way we think of competition. And so that's what this was, right? There was collaboration.
Yeah.
There was someone else who said, hey, yeah, beat my record. Here's how to do it. What did that interaction look like when you first approached him?
Yeah, so when I announced pretty much a year before I did the run that I was going to do it. And so it was October 2024, and then I was going to start around October 25. And then in the beginning of 2025, I'm across this guy on social media, and he's like, training to run across Utah. I'm like, what? Like, this guy totally stole my idea. And then I click on his profile, and he had already been training for it, and I was, anyway. But this guy lives 5 miles away. like exact same thing. Like maybe I'll shoot him a follow and like ask him some questions, and he's like, basically his response was like, yeah, I'm doing it in April. I'm doing a training run next week. You should come run with me. And so, oh, it sounds good. So went and ran with him, kind of picked his brains, and then from then on we were kind of just buddies. So when he was doing the run, I went out and ran for 20 miles one of the days with him, and then we were texting before and after, and then after he finished the run he was just basically full on board with helping me in any way he could. So he was like, "Yeah, dude. I mean, I set the record, but like it's the whole point of records is to set like a new standard, and hopefully somebody beats it, and then I can go back out and do it again." So he sent me the route. He sent me. I'm really bad with like spreadsheets and like computer stuff, but I don't know if he's good at it or somehow he like found someone that was good at it, but he had like spreadsheets already made with everything that was, so I just had to basically fill in the spreadsheets. Everything was already done. The route was pre-made. So I basically just copy pasted everything that he did for my run and it saved me, I don't even know how like hundreds of hours probably of planning.
Ah,
So
so let's just set the stage for a second. So, uh, people who aren't from Utah or have never been to Utah might have a certain picture of what the state looks like in their minds. Give us an idea of the different kinds of terrain that you had to traverse during the whole run.
yeah, so Utah kind of has almost everything, and I ran through pretty much all of it. Started up in like the mountains, I think close to 9,000 feet up in on the Idaho border by Logan. And so it's you're super cold up there. Well, luckily at this time of the year and this whole year, it was super dry and a lot warmer than normal, but typically there would be like a couple feet of snow up there. Got lucky, but you start up in the mountains, come down through the valley, you're running along the mountains, and then you kind of cut over, you're in like the plains sort of, so there's just kind of nothing for miles, a bunch of just open land and hills, and then you run through that, and then you start getting more into the desert where the plants start turning into rocks and the dirt starts turning red, and then you end in St. George, which is like 110 degrees. So you start in this freezing cold place, and you basically run down past the mountains through the plains and then into the desert
Mm,
all in 10 days. So wasn't boring, that's for sure. That made it easier.
yeah. Well, so I think you answered the next question, which was what was the total time that it took for you to cross the state?
Yeah, so the total time was 9 days, 8 hours, and I think 32 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. So
Okay. And what was the previous record?
9 days, 17 hours.
Ooh.
So I beat Mason by I think a little over 12 hours or maybe a little under.
Uh-huh. And so, all right, I would love to hear about some of the more challenging and or memorable moments from this run across Utah. And you can kind of spitball in whatever order comes to your mind, but give me some of the harder moments and or some of the more memorable moments.
I would say I'd say a lot of the hard moments were pretty memorable. Like in a lot of the ways, there were some good moments that weren't hard that were memorable, but I think the most memorable parts were the parts that every minute felt like an hour.
Mm,
But there was 2 days in particular. One day was I think the start of day four. We ended day three on a climb, and then started day four on a climb, and we were in this place called Eureka, but it's basically like an old gold mining town, and it was freezing cold. And then the first 5 miles of that day were just straight up trails into like up a mountain, and then after that it was going to be downhill. But those first 5 miles, it was freezing cold. There was a headwind. I remember I just kept checking my watch, and I felt like I'd gone a mile, and I'd gone a tenth of a mile, and every 30 seconds I was stopping and leaning over my poles, and I just remember thinking like, this is it. Like I'm not making it to the top of this hill. Like I can't take more than 3 steps without like feeling like I'm gonna collapse. Sun wasn't out yet. It was dark. And then when we make it like 3 miles, all of a sudden the sun comes up behind us and we're like up close to the top of this mountain so you can see for miles and miles and miles. It's like the best sunrise of the trip. And then we hit the summit and then I went from the lowest low of the trip where I'm like, this is Like I'm done. Like I can't do this anymore. Like I'm gonna just step on this rock weird and break my ankle or something so I can be done. And then we hit the top of the hill, and it was the highest high of the whole trip where we start running downhill. I'm running the fastest I've run the whole trip so far. The van's following us playing like, oh, what's the name of the song? Drops of Jupiter.
Oh,
And like we're just singing as loud as we can, like sprinting while we're singing, and like just felt like a little kid. And then I think that was pretty memorable. Um, I don't know. There was another day where we had probably like 40 to 50 mile an hour headwinds for like 25 miles,
wow.
and that was pretty brutal. It was the same thing. Just you felt like you were pushing so hard, but you were moving so slow. It was windy enough that Simon was with me pacing for part of it, and we would like put our hands like this in front of us, and it would like we'd kind of like cut through the air more, and it was easier to move forward. And it was like it was pretty bad, but we found ways to have fun in it, and like anyway, got it done. So those are probably the two hardest parts, and then other than that, like I think. I mean, it was boring for sure and painful, but I think after day two or three, I kind of was in like a fight or flight sort of mode or something. Like I don't remember a lot of the days, and like I kind of just remember thinking like I didn't know where I was, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just walking, and like I would go hours without even having like a thought that I remember. And so I like, which sounds like kind of scary, but it just time was just passing by. Like I would just kind of forget where I was, and all of a sudden I'm 20 miles into the day. I'm like, oh, nice, like 25 more. So
Now, tell me a little bit about the importance of the people, right? I know Simon, and for anyone who's listening who doesn't know Simon, Simon, I don't even know how to describe Simon, to be honest. How would you describe Simon, Adam?
I would say think of like the most wholesome person you know and the best person you know, and just put them together into a person. That's Simon.
That fits. So
Yeah.
tell me about the importance of having people, having the right people with you on this journey.
I mean, I think that was the most important thing, like without a doubt, especially for what I was doing. And I guess it applies to everything, but for me, it was like I was already so kind of like on edge and pushing myself to like a place that I haven't been before all the time that like I could not deal with any outside stress, right? Like if I came into the RV and like I felt like the crew was anxious and like rushed, it just rubbed off on me times 10. And then I'm like, oh, I have these people out here taking 10 days away from their family and they're miserable in the van. Like, and then I wasn't even thinking about what I needed to be thinking about. But that only happened like one time. And the whole rest of the trip, like it was fun. Like it sounds crazy, but it was genuinely fun. We would get back to the RV, we were just pulling pranks on each other, just having like the best time ever. And like when you're in a low spot and you get to the RV and everyone else is just laughing and cracking jokes, you just forget about how sorry you're feeling for yourself immediately. And like you're like, wait, what's so funny? And then they tell you and you just start laughing and then you're back just reset. So I think having a positive crew that I didn't have to worry about, like I just knew when my alarm goes off, I wake up, I get ready and I run and they'll take care of everything else. Made it a lot easier. So
I think it's so cool to have a group of people around you at any point, whether you're running across Utah or you're just going about your regular life. Having a group of people who cares, who you can laugh with, who you can do hard things with. I think a lot of people want that and don't know where to find it. And one thing I want to highlight about your situation is that one of the reasons these people, dropped everything for 10 days and were in a van following you across Utah, running, taking care of you, etc., is because one, they care about you, but two, because you were doing something hard with a meaning. You were pushing limits. You were
mhm.
striving for something that was inspiring and admirable in a lot of ways. And I think it's a good reminder that when we're bold, when we do hard things, when we pursue things that matter, people come out of the woodworks and want to support that. They want to be around you. And I think a lot of people, I fall into this pattern from time to time as well, just kind of sit at home, live their life in a bit of a shell, in a bit of a fog, and just wish that they had these people around them. But if you just went out and you did some things, if you worked hard, if you pursued something big, you set a goal, you chased a dream, you might be surprised at the people who would stand up, raise their hand, and say, "Oh, I want to be part of that. I want to help you with that." And I think it's a good reminder that we have to put ourselves out there if we want the kind of experience and relationships that you had on that trip.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the other thing I think is the people that you're looking for that are going to give you those things, like they're probably not going to fall into your lap. I mean, you might get lucky. You might have like a childhood best friend that just turns out to be the GOAT and just pushes you super hard and like, but for me, it's like I met my whole crew after I decided that I was going to start chasing my purpose and chasing my dreams. And I think that there's something contagious about people that like believe in themselves or believe in where they're going, and like you can feel when you know somebody is like moving forward, and like it's like a not addictive, but what's the word, like magnetic feeling, like it's the kind of people you want to be around. And then you also attract that same kind of person when you're that sort of person. So it's like if you have like this almost like this belief that you're going places even if you have no proof, it's contagious, and then it attracts other people that have that same feeling. And then when you put two of those people together, that's when something crazy happens. So I think that's like if you're struggling to find those people, I would say like if I mean it's easier for me, or I guess the way I'll describe it is like through running because that's what happened to me. But it's like I decided I wanted to start running. I decided I wanted to run across Utah. I went to this retreat where I knew I'd meet runners and where there would be people that were like-minded trying to better themselves. And then that's where I met my crew. And then since then, run clubs is where I've met all my best friends or people at the sauna. And so I think if you're looking for people in your life to help you like move forward in a specific area, it's like you got to go find them. They're not just going to come to you, but if you put in the effort, you'll find them. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that has been very fulfilling for me is finding ways to bring people together. And I didn't know I had what you were talking about until I look back on the journey. But there is this conviction that I had of, I quit my job, I started Project Endure. It's been 5 years. I look back at those 5 years and I think, man, I kind of had what I call the with or without you energy, right? Like I'm going in this direction with or without you, right?
mhm.
Not in a like I want to leave people behind, but like I just feel called to do this thing, so I'm going to do this thing regardless if
Yeah,
anybody else comes. And in hindsight, that's what it was. There were other people who thought, man, I want that energy, right? I want to be like that. I want to do these things. And so I started to find ways to, host group runs. I started to change coaching so that there was an option for group coaching. I started holding an annual event. And our annual event coming up in from the time of this recording, a month and a half, 2 months, it's our fifth event. We'll have 250 people there. And I try to describe it to people. There's fitness, there's food, there's cold plunges, journaling, team building activities. But the whole magic is the people, right? Like the magic of that gathering is the people who show up. And someone said it to me once, if you spend time with a bunch of wizards, you're bound to catch some magic. And yeah, if you spend time in places where there are good, genuine people who care about improving and growing and doing hard things, that will rub off on you. And sometimes you have to get a little bit uncomfortable to put yourself in that room. But I guarantee if there are people who are like minded and care about growth and you show up, they're going to welcome you and they're going to want the same for you. And I think it's a good reminder. Even this section of our conversation is a good reminder for me that I should continue to put myself out there. And also, if you want good friends, sometimes you have to be a good friend first. And that means supporting other people in their endeavors before maybe you get anything in return. Not that that's why you're doing it, but it has to be reciprocal. So anyway, that was a bit of a brain dump, and I have one more thought. But before I go there, any other thoughts on your end?
I have one actually. I think that it's important to talk about the other side of the coin too, where it's like if you want to find good people, or like if you're around people that are doing meaningful things and doing things that are like meaningful to them and making an impact, it makes you want to do the same thing. But if you're around people that are complaining about their 9 to 5 and they feel like they talk about being stuck in this rat race, or that it's either way. If you're around people that are meaningful and lift you up, you're going to want to be more productive and do more. If you're around people that are just complacent and feel stuck, you're going to feel stuck too. And so I think if you feel like you're there right now and you feel stuck, maybe get around some people that don't think about being stuck, right? They're thinking outside the box. They don't, it's just not something they think about. And then those people, for some reason, never find themselves stuck. So I think that's an important, I didn't word that very well, but basically,
No,
yeah.
that was great, Adam. And honestly, I'll just add to that because I've lived this. I was in a spot in college, the beginning of college, where I had put myself in scenarios and around people who were, not as serious as I wanted to be. They were spending a lot of time drinking and partying and doing those things, which I think in college is normal. You find yourself around that. But I knew I didn't want that. And the hardest thing for me was choosing to say, okay, I don't want this. I don't want to be around this environment, these people. And I also don't have that other group yet, right? Like, I don't have that retreat. I don't have that event. I don't know where to find it. And so I'm going to choose to step out into the middle by myself because I know it's better in this season to be alone and not have that other group yet than to just stick with this group out of comfort and convenience. And I think a lot of people do find themselves there. They think, okay, I know I don't want to be in this circle, in this place with these people, but I also don't know where to go yet. And so I'll just stay here until I find that next thing. But the truth is, the longer you stay there, the harder it is to get out. And I'll caveat all of this by saying it doesn't mean that that group we're talking about leaving, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that they're not thinking about the things that you want to be thinking about. They're not doing the things you want to be doing. And it's cliche, but it's true. You become like the people you surround yourself with. And there's just no getting around that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think two things, right? Like the water doesn't get warmer if you wait to jump. And the other thing is like I think there's nothing wrong with like if I think everyone their life goal should be like to be happy and to be as good of a person as they can possibly be and to treat other people with kindness. Like I think those are the more important things in life. But and there's some people that are perfectly happy and content and they're great people living just a 9 to 5 and like there's nothing wrong with that at all. And like if you're happy with that, don't hear this and think, "Oh, I need to be doing more with my life." Like but I think if there's certain people and like you know who you are if you're listening to this, but where like you just kind of have this feeling inside of you like you're meant for more. Like you have like there's something more that you're meant to do with your life. And if you're one of those people hanging with the people that are not complacent but satisfied with less is gonna keep you on that level. And nothing wrong with that, like I said. But if you are someone that just has this undenying like drive that like you want to excel in whatever it is, like you need to be around other people like that. Otherwise it won't happen. So
Yeah. So before I ask you the next question, I'll just add a quote that I think fits well with this part of our conversation. It's from Mark Hansen, who said, "Do not wait until everything is just right. It will never be perfect. There will always be challenges, obstacles, and less than perfect conditions. So what? Get started now. With each step you take, you will grow stronger and stronger, more skilled and more skilled, more and more confident, and more successful." And I think it just goes to that idea of like, you're never going to feel ready, right? Ready is not, it's not a feeling. Ready is a decision. And it's something that you have to choose, right? It applies, I'm sure, to the run across Utah in many ways. It applies to a number of other things both you and I have done. You have to take the first step. But once you take the first step, you have to choose to keep going. And this is the Project Endure podcast. And so I like to ask, when you think of the word endure or endurance, what comes to mind? What does that mean to you?
I would say like when I think of endure, I think of like finishing the job and like getting the job done. Like doesn't really matter how you feel. Like I don't know why, but like what just came to my head was like a blue collar like framer of a house or something, and it's like blowing snow outside, but like they have to finish the roof of the house. It's like they're sitting there. They're probably not enjoying their lives very much. They're cold, their hands hurt, but they have to endure. Like they don't have an option other than finish the roof of the house. And I think that's kind of what I think of as endure. I'm not a roofer, but that's sort of the mindset I take into like running and anything where it's like this is miserable. I don't want to do this anymore, but like I got to get the roof on the house essentially. So
I love that. Nobody's ever used the compared, endurance sport or endurance to a roofer. So that's
yeah,
good.
I haven't either, but there's a
Yeah,
first for everything.
it's a great visual. And I think the other thing to add in there is like endurance, and I think this goes without saying, but I'll say it. Endurance doesn't feel good all the time, right? Like I think while you're doing it, while you're embodying it, it often doesn't feel good, but you know that it's good for you. And I think there's a big difference between those two things. And I've seen and I've also experienced seasons where you're doing the thing, you're pushing forward, you're building the business, you have the run streak or whatever it is that you're doing, and you know it's good for you, you need to keep going. And this thought comes up in your mind of like, well, this is hard. This doesn't feel good. Why am I doing this? Right. But you have to keep the bigger picture in mind. And I think that's just an important thing to remember for endurance is that's not always going to feel good in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think at least in my head when I think of like endure more than I guess endurance, but like when I think of the word endure, I almost don't think of anything pleasurable. Like I think of like just suffering, like the pain cave. And I think it's the same thing with anything in life. Like most of the things that are moving you forward or moving the needle are not something you want to do. Like it's pretty simple. Most things aren't like as bad where like you're running 400 miles and you have 8 more hours left, but like I mean, waking up at 7 a.m., like even if it's not, I don't know, 5 a.m. like you wake up every day or 4, I can't remember what Simon said, something crazy. It's like I still want to snooze my alarm till 7:30, like, but everything that moves you forward, everything that gets you where you want to go in life is not going to be pleasant.
Yeah.
So unless you can learn to enjoy the discomfort and endure, and then that's when life starts to become fun.
Yeah.
So
Well, just one more thought there before I hit you with the big final question. Most things in life are going to be hard either way, right? There's no getting around the fact that life is hard. And whether or not you choose to go push yourself and run far distances or build the business or pursue the relationship, whatever, or you choose to sit on the couch or stay home or not do the thing, it's going to be hard either way. There's no avoiding that. And I think if you could align your effort with the things that matter, it's a little bit easier to not mind the fact that it's hard.
mhm.
And right, like that's the important part. Is like it's going to be hard regardless of what you do. Life is going to be hard. So you might as well just pursue the thing that matters.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, there are people listening to this podcast who are all over the world going through all different kinds of things. Some of them are dealing with some minor inconveniences that feel big, and other people are just in seasons where hope feels elusive and it's dark and it's deep and they're just looking for some piece of encouragement, some guidance, something to latch onto. And we spoke about how you've been in some deeper darker places. If somebody on the other end of this podcast could listen to you share some guidance or encouragement, and you could say anything that you'd like, what would you say to that person listening right now?
I would say never lose hope. Like the way I think about it is you're in this super long tunnel and you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know if the tunnel is 100 miles long or 1 mile long, if it has 1,000 turns or if it has one turn. But I think hope is just knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know when you're going to get to the end of the tunnel, but it's there. And I think it's there for everyone. And you just got to keep going. And when you turn the corner and you finally see the end of the tunnel for the first time, it's worth all the darkness. So,
Mm.
um, that, and then I also think it's like when you're feeling down or feeling like life's kind of hopeless, I think a lot of the time people have this version of themselves that they imagine that's like the happy version of themselves or what the happy version of themselves would look like. And they feel like it's not the same person. And like, I just want you to know that that version of yourself that you see that's like happy and fulfilled and living a life that they like choose and create, like that's you. That person is inside of you. It's not, you don't have to become a different person to be that person. Like the life that you want to live and the person you want to be is already, you're already that person. You just need to start taking the actions to like turn it into reality. So
I have always thought of the future Joe as someone that needed to be built, something where I needed to assemble the pieces I needed to add on top of. And I think in recent years, I've realized that maybe there's a little bit of that, right? You've got to slap some clay on the sculpture, but really more so it's an uncovering, it's a chiseling away, it's unveiling the thing that's been inside of you the whole time.
mhm.
And that's what you just made me think of, is like, yeah, that version, that person, that feeling, it is inside of you. You just have to be patient enough, persistent enough to let that shine through. And one of my favorite quotes ever is from Alexis Carroll, and he said, "Man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor." And right, sometimes it takes hard work, hard things, and a little bit of hurt to get to that different version of you that's always been inside. Then you have to chisel away and chip at it, but it's there. And I think that's such a great encouragement. And, for people listening, Adam, who are encouraged by you, by our conversation, inspired by what you've done and how you carry yourself, where's the best place for people to reach out and say thank you, connect with you, and just follow along with what you're up to?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram. My Instagram is just Adam Lee Burns. And then I post on TikTok too, but I don't know, TikTok doesn't like me very much, so mainly just Instagram. Um, my email's in my bio on Instagram if you want to reach out to me personally or ask me questions or anything, feel free. So
Amazing. Well, I'll link your Instagram down below to make it easy. And I just want to thank you for this conversation. And I'll give you a quick compliment. And it's very genuine. When I was 23, I was in grad school and I had a path for my life, which turned out to I have a couple pivots from there to here. But I don't think I was as mature and thoughtful and intentional as you are. And it's very impressive. And I just wanted to let you know that. And it's been a pleasure getting to talk to you.
well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I look up to you a lot, so it's cool being on here. And anyway, I appreciate the opportunity.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.